Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Two Stewards Show. I'm Mark and I'm here with...
Brent.
Just in case you're expecting a surprise guest. Nope, it's still Brent.
Same old.
Same couple of fellas. Today, we just want to do a sort of a current events episode. We want to talk about the fall economic update and how it applies to what we're talking about, to real estate. And Brent's laughing already.
It's like, do we really want to talk about this?
I do.
Okay. I'll let you talk about it.
We'll call it the fall economic update and other fairy tales.
Okay. That's a great... Why do you say that, Mark?
Well, because...
You don't believe it?
No.
You never believed those fairy tales that you were read as a kid either?
No, I believed them.
Oh.
You know, at the time.
Hansel and Gretel has more validity than the...
Pretty much. So, there's a couple days ago, the government released their fall economic update, and it's not a budget, but it's just sometimes it's a mini budget. They didn't really do any major spending announcements this year, although they would have you think they did. But yeah, just a snapshot of where they are, and you know, it's a little bit of PR. It's a little bit of not so much of an update, really. But there's a few things in there that were interesting. I thought really affected real estate investors, and so we should talk about them.
All right. What are they?
You excited to talk about them, Brent?
Oh, yay.
Okay, so first one we can talk about is the Canadian Mortgage Charter.
Ooh.
Yeah, sounds pretty impressive, right?
Isn't it the new Canadian Mortgage Charter?
Well, there wasn't one before, so
okay, so it is new.
It would be new, I guess. So I'll just see if I can pull it up on the screen here. So there's a bunch of things. 6 points. So allow temporary extensions of the amortization period for mortgage holders at risk. So basically, you can request your bank to increase your amortization temporarily, so that to drop your payments, right? So if you've paid your mortgage down and you got 20 years left, you can call your bank and say, "Hey, can we bump this back
if it's
up
an
to 30
emergency,
years?"
Or like if you're
if you're experiencing hardship,
right?
Who determines that? I don't know. So,
well, wasn't that a thing before too? You could still do that. Like,
let's go through all these.
Okay.
And then we'll see what is actually new and what's not. So you got that. Waiving fees and costs that would have otherwise been charged for relief measures. So that is actually new. Not requiring insured mortgage holders to requalify under the insured minimum qualifying rate when switching lenders at mortgage renewal. So basically, if you're going to switch a lender, sometimes you would have to requalify completely. You'd have to go through the whole qualification process.
So like you come to the end of your term.
Yeah, and you're with, let's say, TD, and you want to switch to Scotia, you could potentially have to requalify, and maybe you wouldn't. So for people who have an existing mortgage and they've had a change in financial circumstances, right, if you just kind of renew your mortgage, your lender will not ask you to requalify. They're just like... sometimes they may call you and say, "Hey, everything the same? Everything good?" Yep, okay. But most of the times they don't. They just offer you the renewal rate, and you
seem to have been paying your payments well for the last, let's say, 5 years. We trust that you're going to, even though you don't have a job now, continue to pay your payments.
But they don't ask, right?
They don't ask,
don't tell. And so...
That's a big thing, right? If you switch to like self-employed or something, and then all of a sudden you don't have... T4 income, the bank's going to go, "Hey, wait a minute."
Number 4, contacting homeowners 4 to 6 months in advance of their mortgage renewal to inform them of their renewal options. Number 5, giving homeowners at risk the ability to make lump sum payments to avoid negative amortization or sell their principal residence without any prepayment penalties, and not charging interest on interest in the event that mortgage relief measures result in a temporary period of negative amortization.
So the interest doesn't compound?
Yeah, you could just be paying interest, and then they would charge you interest on that as well if you had a negative.
But they're going to waive that. So what?
Yeah. So, okay. So number one, most of this stuff is not new. So banks have been doing.
Are you serious?
I for once in my life, I'm serious.
Okay.
Right? So allowing temporary extensions of the amortization period, like banks have been doing that since we've had renewals coming up and like since rates have gone up.
Yeah.
Banks have just been doing that. We've talked about this, right? Amortization periods.
Making them longer.
Making them longer. They're just doing it automatically in some cases.
Yeah. We talked about 40 years, right? The new thing from Equitable Bank.
Equitable's doing 40 years. But yeah, we've seen people have their amortizations increase, especially on a variable rate mortgage to 50, 60, 90 years, whatever, right? So waiving the fees and costs that may have been charged for that, I mean, that was up to the bank discretion. So a lot of this
saying that the government's going to force banks to do this?
So to me, this is the interesting part. Because, like I said, most of this stuff has not. I can get rid of that. Most of this stuff is not new. Yeah. Banks are doing almost all of this already. Even the qualifying, you don't have to requalify when you're switching. If you have a good mortgage broker, you don't have to do that anyways. Contacting homeowners 4 to 6 months in advance, like most banks do that.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think that was not a thing. I know mine does.
Yeah, if you want the business, right? If you're going to come for renewal and the guy's thinking about going somewhere else, it's just good business if you're a bank to call the guy in advance. Yeah. It's just automated, right?
Yeah, and exactly. Like I'm sure mine is at least 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
Which when you do like a 1 year term, it's like you're talking to them all the time. Lump sum payments, banks have done that. They're like, hey, you're going negative in your amortization. We're either going to increase your payments or you can do a lump sum. Up. Yeah, and people have done that.
But I guess they're saying, okay, we're waiving any fees around doing that. Or
no, they've been doing penalties. That. Yeah, prepayment penalty. Yeah, well, selling your residence without any prepayment penalties. So if you sell your home halfway into the mortgage term, but I think a lot of them also didn't do that either.
Right. So what is new in this list?
What's new is it looks like the government's going to legislate this.
Right.
So take away.
So it's basically the same thing that we've always had, or that the banks have done for the most part.
Yep.
But now legislating it as a rule.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's to me that's so it makes it sound like they're really doing something when banks have already been doing this. But to me that's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit scary, right? Anytime the government legislates a lot of this stuff, because they're not thinking of, like, if banks are doing it already, good. They're going to act in their best interest. So if you're like a free market guy, like, fine, whatever. But I don't know. And I don't know what the second or third order effects of this are. Yeah. But surely there are some. And surely the government hasn't thought of this.
And we don't know what they are yet. But this article from CBC says, the finance official told CBC News that most of the measures existed already, but may have been unclear or difficult for consumers to find. So I guess what they're saying is now they're out in the open, and we said it to everybody, but they are kind of taking credit for, hey, we came up with this new mortgage charter. Yeah. It's the exact same thing you're currently doing. We just put it on a piece of paper for you.
Yeah. Which is what most of this economic update is.
Right.
It's all stuff that already existed, and they're just trying to make you...
What else is in here?
We've done this. Well, so you have the and there was I just closed it, but there was a blurb on the first-time homebuyers update, which if you're a first-time homebuyer, absolutely use this thing.
Because it's free money, or what is it?
It's free money. Well, it's tax-free going in, and it's tax-free coming out. That's crazy. Yeah. Right? So you can use it, if you put in 10 grand, you can drop your income by 10 grand that year for tax purposes.
Yeah.
But then you don't have to make that up when you take it back out.
Right.
So if you're already saving for a home, absolutely throw as much as you can into your first-time home buyer plan thing.
Yeah.
Because, presumably if you took that money out and you did not buy a house, you'd have to pay tax on it.
Yeah.
But even then, you might still be further ahead.
So you don't have to replenish that account or do anything like that. Because I know when I did it, first time.
Take it out of your RSPs, yeah.
Okay, so this is different. It's not RSP.
This has existed for a little bit, the first time home buyer plan. But yeah, and I don't remember the limits now. But it's decent limits per year. So if you're a young couple and you are saving up for that home, and this money is going to go towards a home, I'm not going to use it for anything else. You get to put it in there, decrease your income for tax purposes, so you get a tax break right up front, which means you can maybe put more into that thing if you get a tax refund, right?
Yeah.
And then when you take it out, it's not taxable. Like the whole idea with RSPs, you can do the same thing, right? Put money in, you decrease
your tax on that year.
Yeah, so you get a tax break that year, but then eventually when you take it out, you're going to pay tax on that money. But that's cool. It compounds tax-free. You get that tax break up front. People have been using this for a long time. Like I don't particularly
like RSPs,
believe in it, but people have been doing it for a long time. But this is like a no-brainer because now you get that money tax. So it compounds tax-free. So if you have some really good years of investments, you can do well, and then you don't have to pay any tax on that income. So even if you changed your mind and you didn't really want to buy a home, go buy a home, and then sell it, right? Or refinance, whatever, because now that money is all tax free. Even if you bought the home and sold it. And there's so many different options here, right? If you were going to leave Canada or something, well, at least you go buy that house and then sell it immediately. You get all that money tax free, and because you have to use that to buy a home,
right?
But once you sell the home, it's a principal residence.
It's your money.
That's tax free money if there was a gain. And even if there wasn't a gain, you still get that money out tax-free. So
how to use the system for your advantage on a Two Steward show.
Hey, that was just off the cuff.
That's the first thing on the list.
That was one of many.
Well, I find it interesting just going down this article a little bit and talk about the vulnerable borrower just before we get into other things on the economic update. So they kind of set this criteria, right? Like these are things that were making it better for the vulnerable borrower. And but the problem is the charter doesn't actually define what that means.
You're right.
So it's like, well, the guidelines are consumer at risk as someone with an existing residential mortgage loan on their principal residence who is experiencing severe financial distress as a result of exceptional circumstances and is at risk of mortgage default. So like the individual case by case base, you can they don't clearly define it. So banks, I guess, it's up to their discretion. Yeah. And that'll be interesting to see, who actually ends up qualifying. Would some lenders be more lenient and say, hey, well, you seem like you're at risk. We're going to give you all these other kind of perks. Or is it going to be you have to basically be on the brink of default?
Well, who makes that determination, right?
Yeah. It sounds like they haven't defined it. Yeah. At this point, it sounds like they haven't defined it, but the banks will have the leeway to define it further, I guess. So anyways, jump into the next thing.
Okay, well, there's a quick one here on short-term rentals, and this
is your thing, eh?
My area, it's my jam. So they're okay. Let me just read the first line here. In Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver alone, there were an estimated 18,900 homes being used as short-term rental properties in 2020, a number that has almost surely increased in recent years. So there was a study done by McGill University, and they said there's probably about 30,000
Wait,
homes.
so what is that? Where is that? That's in
It's
Vancouver?
in the fall economic update.
But is that in Vancouver, those 18,000?
Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. Those are the biggest short-term rental markets in Canada.
Okay.
And they have something over 50% of all the short-term rentals in Canada.
Right.
In those three cities. So they're saying there's about 19,000 homes being used as short STRs in 2020. That's gone up for sure. McGill's study said there's about 30,000 homes that could be used for long-term. There's more short-term rentals, but not all of them are either full-time or suitable as a rental.
Right.
But a full home rental, they came up with a number of about 30,000 across Canada. This is 2021, so the number's probably gone up. But the government is making a big fuss about adding potentially 30,000 homes to the rental market across Canada, right?
Yeah.
When we need millions. Like by 2030,
it's politically popular.
In addition to what we are building now, which is about, what was it, 200,000 a year, 250,000, I think. What would we say, about 3 million a year is kind of the pace that we're on, although that will certainly have slowed right now. In addition to that, the CMHC estimated we need another 3.5 million by 2030. Homes, right? So
30,000 is a good dent.
Like, you know, yeah. So I mean, that's always been my argument, is that it's such a small number of homes on the market that just be smart about it. If it's less than 1% of the rental stock in Canada, just tax it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking the other day too, if they do this, you mentioned second and third order effects. Well, nobody's going to be in those areas as a tourist, or are they all going to go to hotels again? Like, how is that going to impact?
That's the argument. They just go to a hotel.
Yeah, they don't know how that's going to affect that whole industry.
No, they don't, because a lot of people will only, I made this point before, a lot of people stay in short-term rentals or go to a place, and I am one of those people, because there's a short-term rental. I'm not taking my whole family to a hotel.
Yeah. What's the fun in that?
Yeah, there's zero fun, Brent. Zero fun if you do a mathematical equation, right? Yeah. Like, the Cricky family plus hotel equals zero fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but if you're in the government, they just switch things around.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah, equals lots of fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Change the numbers. I mean, they're probably against big families, anyways. I don't know. Yeah. That would be the solution to our immigration problem. But
oh man,
getting back to this. Yeah, I mean, so they're making all this effort to.
So what are they actually doing to the Airbnbs? Like, they're just saying it's illegal?
Sorry, my point is, like, just tax them.
Yeah,
they're there. They exist. There's a need for it, and tax them and use that money to go towards affordable housing. Because number one, if these go back on the market, they're not affordable housing. These are nice places.
Yeah.
For the most part, especially if it's a full home, it's going to be a nice place.
They might make the overall rent market be a bit saturated for a while. Like, it might be a year and a half where, a whole bunch of things flood on the market, rents slow down, which right now they are kind of slowing down. Like, it's the fall, it's the winter,
right. You talk about Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. So Vancouver, there's been a bunch of short-term rentals because the provincial government has cracked down as well, it really restricted. So there's been a bunch come on the market. I don't think it's going to make a dent in the rental market, if you ask me, because of this. It's a small number. They're not all coming on the market at once.
Yeah.
And we already have, which I think we'll get into later. You got a chart on that. The rental market is just sizzling.
Yeah, so actually, it's slowing down a bit.
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, so it's very high.
Yeah.
But the rate at which it's growing is slowing down. So it's kind of like this inflation conversation we keep having, where inflation is high, it's going up, but it's not going up as fast.
Yeah, right? So if I'm in the fetal position on the ground and you're kicking me in the kidneys, you're not kicking me as hard. That's nice.
But I'm still kicking you.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you so much for not kicking me as hard.
But if you just flip it to this chart here. So this is the rents. So rents have gone up, just spiked, right, in the last year. And we have noticed that a lot. Like, boots on the ground, we're renting units.
Boots in my kidneys.
Yeah, boots in the kidneys. We're noticing it. We're noticing it that rents have gone up quite significantly, right?
Yeah.
Like, people move out of a unit, right? They've been in here for 2-3 years, and the rent goes up by $600.
Yeah.
Right? And that's significant.
Yeah.
Especially on like a $2,000, $2,500 unit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is saying too, like, it's slowing down, right? Rents in the CPI are surging at the highest rate since the 1970s. The rented accommodations index spiked above 8% in October and is now adding almost 0.6 to inflation. So that is sizzling.
So it's going straight up.
Yeah.
Is what it looks like. But that's slowing down?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know much about math, Brent, but.
Where is it here? Yeah. So he's talking about, landlords losing leverage as Toronto's rental market slows to a crawl. So, it just anecdotally too, like, a lot of investors I've been talking to, our listings as well, like, they've been they've been slow in the last little bit. Like you aren't getting as many applicants or as many showings. But that's kind of seasonal too. Like it's typical of the late fall, winter. Nobody wants to move in December. Like nobody wants to move in January 1st. Like it's just, hey, you wake up from your Christmas holidays and then you take all your stuff out of the house and you move to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, nobody chooses to do that, right? So it usually is slower, but and then with this, the rising rents, like people are thinking twice, right? Like, hey, would it make more sense to pay more somewhere else just because I want to move or have to move?
Yeah.
So do. But I think there's going to be a lot of pent up demand moving forward into future years as well, right? Because people do want to move, people do want to get job opportunities elsewhere. Like,
the same things that happen every year are going to happen this year.
Yeah,
just people are deferring it seems like. So
anyways, I forget what we were talking about.
We're talking about short-term rentals. So basically the upshot is what they're going to do is coordinate with the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, and make it so that if you are operating,
down the law on you, Mark.
Yes.
Not only are they kicking you in the kidneys,
now
they're gonna come down with a big hammer. This is not sounding good.
It's really not like, again, it's almost a nothing burger, right? So the idea is in an area where short-term rentals are restricted, you will not be able, if you're an operator, you won't be able to claim your expenses against your income. So you can't claim your mortgage. Well, so there's a few things here, right? So, I mean, I don't know. To me, if you're operating in an area where it's prohibited or restricted, like you shouldn't be doing that. So whatever. So if they're going to give more teeth to that legislation, like, okay, great. But that's just, those governments already technically have the power to shut you down.
Yeah.
The municipal governments. And like maybe they won't, and maybe they don't have the resources. So they also announced $50 million in funding for municipalities to be able to have those resources. But I mean, you spread that out across Canada. It's not a ton of money.
But from the municipality's perspective, is it actually advantageous to close down all the Airbnbs? I'm just struggling with this because is it better to have a long-term resident? Like they're still getting their property tax from that unit, right? Because the owner's paying that.
Yeah.
It's still
the housing crisis, right?
But is it just that talk? But that's like, is that a federal thing? It's just that talk, like that talking point. Hey, we need to address the affordable housing crisis or the housing crisis.
Well,
so we think
it depends what month it is, right?
But like the municipality's perspective, they're saying, well, we're going to close this. Say there's 10,000 or 1,000 units in our city. They could be bringing in some economic revenue for tourist destinations around and restaurants and whatever else. Yeah. But we're going to close those in favor of, like, what do the municipalities benefit by doing that?
They get more housing, more long-term housing.
Yeah, but what does that do to them?
So in Hamilton, for example, well, never mind the numbers, Brent. Okay. We have a housing crisis and we need to look like we're doing something.
Right.
So this has been my argument. You're actually shooting yourself in the foot. You have a wealth driver, an economic driver in your city.
And you're stopping that.
And you're stopping it. So dumb, right? Just add a municipal accommodation tax, which a lot of municipalities have.
Use that to build
like a 4% tax or something, right? Yeah. And then I know you're just going to spend it on like pretty ribbons and bows or something anyways, but you could say that you're going to put that towards affordable housing, right? Like I drive by this spot on James Street. Again, we're very local here, Hamilton, but this government housing site that's been boarded up for years and years, and there's like 100 probably units in there. Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Fix them up, get them rented out if you want affordable housing.
The infrastructure is there already.
Yeah. Like, anyways, you're just going to piddle around with like, oh, let's penalize these terrible short-term rental owners. And like, I get it. There's a housing crisis, so maybe every unit counts, but look a little bit beyond your nose.
Yeah. Well, then you could start talking about all the, people in 5 or 10 bedroom houses that are just one person. Like, if you want to talk about using the existing housing better, I guess the low-hanging fruit is short-term rentals because it's an easy one. You just legislate.
It is. But is the next one long-term rentals?
Yeah.
We're going to legislate that a little bit more?
I don't know.
So somebody made this point, and maybe this is tinfoil hat territory, right? Like first you're going to let, cut down on the short-term rentals. Well, what's the next thing? The long-term rental market. Because
midterm.
Guess what? There's still, they don't even know what midterm is.
Okay.
But guess what? This isn't going to solve the housing crisis. So in a year, what are they going to do? Look at long-term rentals and be like, we really need to do more legislation on a federal level, like we don't have enough legislation in Ontario of long-term rentals.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Maybe
well,
there's
what would that do?
Funding a percentage of rent that you can charge, and like a formula based on square footage or bedrooms.
Yeah. So I'm going to Florida in a couple weeks. Actually, next week.
Braggy.
Yeah, to go check out rental properties for our investors and stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So, so many people are doing this. Right. They're looking elsewhere, going, if I have money and I want to invest it and I want to build housing units, where's the most favorable jurisdiction to do that?
Yeah.
And they're eager to do this. They're eager to put their money into housing. They know there's a problem. They want to help, but they don't want to be victim to all this extra taxation and legislation and risk and whatever, right? So they're just picking the best spot to do it, and they're exploring their options. So I don't know, that frustrates me.
It's the same with our clients, like short-term rental. You want to hit the button there?
Oh, yeah.
Short-term rental clients in of ours, right? The same thing. It's just
you're local, but you're also looking abroad.
Yeah, we're looking at the States, and a lot of our clients are also like, okay, once you're up and running,
let's
show me the numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of them would just be like, hey, I'm going to sell a property here and buy down there. Because whether it's a short-term rental or a long-term rental, I can make more cash flow and have less regulatory headache.
Yeah.
Going
even rent controls is such a big thing here in Ontario, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
And it does, and yet we still have a housing crisis, and rental prices are
Anyways, what's the next thing on your fall economic
update? Okay, let me
update?
just quickly update. So the short-term rental thing, if you're operating illegally, more or less, you won't be able to claim your expenses. So that's, kind of hit them in the pocketbook, I guess.
Right.
To me, if you have a decent short-term rental, you won't care. You're just going to keep doing it, and it is what you won't claim your expenses. Fine. And then guess what? A lot of people may also not claim their income now.
Yeah.
If they can find, if they can rent for cash or off book or whatever, they're going to do that. So
it's creating another problem where there isn't one.
Yeah. So it's just again
But when they do claim income, the government gets tax revenue.
Well, they would.
So
so less tax revenue. Anyways, ridiculous. Okay, next.
We're not going to keep griping about this. We're going to move.
No, we're going to gripe about other things.
Okay.
Okay. here's a fairy tale for you.
All right, people got to look at this chart.
Yeah. So if you're, and apologies if you're listening, you can't see the charts that we're pulling up here. So this is from the Fall Economic Update, chart A1-4, long-term projections of the federal debt.
Okay, so this is in the Canadian Fall Economic Update.
Yeah, this is in the children's book called the Fall Economic Update 2023.
Okay.
So they
that's funny because I just went to the library the other day because my wife ordered a bunch of books for our kids. And I think that she does it once a month or something because we got a stack of it was this tall.
Yeah.
Lady's like, oh, your kids are going to have so much fun. It's like, yeah. I'm going to be reading all of these books, which is going to be fun. But I mean, it was just a foot and a half tall.
The good news is once they learn to read, you don't have to read them anymore.
Yeah. So we're getting there.
You still got to look at them though. Okay. I think I'm recovered. So long-term projections of the federal debt as a percentage of GDP. So that's important to remember.
Yeah.
This is not the overall debt levels, but as a percentage of gross domestic product. So the first line here, I think, is where we are now. So we see there was a big spike in 2020 to 2021, and then that has started coming down.
Okay, so just before you get into this, so just explain what it means, the debt to percentage of GDP. What is that? Why is it important that it's a percentage of GDP? What does that actually mean?
I don't even think it is, but
okay,
it's just a way to measure the economic health of your country.
So
right?
because the debt is a number, but the
Debt ain't nothing but a number, baby.
Relative to what? Like the GDP, right? So you're comparing these.
Yeah.
two.
So if you talk about all the economic activity in your country, which is GDP, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think it's a way to rationalize the debt, to rationalize it away. To be like, yeah, we got a lot of debt, but look at all the activity.
Right, it's big, but compared to the economy.
Sure, and this is a feature of modern monetary theory, which we have to do an episode on, is that the actual number of your debt doesn't matter. It's the ratio of debt to GDP that really matters. Because if you have a lot of debt, but you also have a ton of economic activity, that's fine because you can make the interest payments on that debt no problem.
Yeah, never mind pay the debt off.
Yeah. So if you're
just make the payments.
I don't know. If you're like if you work at McDonald's and you have
switch it to you because you're the one talking.
I guess fine. If you work at McDonald's and you have $100,000 in debt, that's a problem. You're never going to pay that, right? And you're going to have problems just making the minimum payments. If you are, for example, a neurosurgeon, and you're making $500,000 a year and you have $100,000 of debt, well, that's a different scenario, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thinking. So to me, it's still like $100,000 of debt. Like you got to do something about that. That's eating up a lot of income. Yeah. And guess what? If you lose your, I don't know, if you do something wrong and you lose your brain surgeon job tomorrow, you still have that debt and you still got to deal with it. So as long as the economy's hot, hey, it's fine. Everything's good. When the economy's not, it's a problem. And keep in mind, we're not talking about reducing the debt here at all, ever. That's not a thing in MMT, modern monetary theory. It's just keeping up payments on the debt. So in that case, you wouldn't be talking about that brain surgeon paying off his debt. In fact, the debt would be going up. But as long as his earnings are going up every year, that's okay because
he can service the debt.
He can service the debt.
He's never going to default, even though he's never going to pay it off.
Yeah, because our economy is built on debt. We need that debt. We can't ever extinguish it because that would cause other problems.
Right. So let's jump into this chart now that we've got that out of the way.
Okay, so 2023, if you're not looking at this, we're about 42% or something of
debt to GDP.
And interestingly, right, it was at maybe 47% or something at the peak of COVID. It's come down a bunch. But then interestingly, it comes back up till probably 2024 or so.
Yeah. Like, so we're on this slow upward trajectory. Like
why is it going up?
As a percentage.
And then they show it going down, right?
Down to what? 10%?
Down to, in 2055... down to like probably 8% or something of GDP, which is like just a ridiculous notion. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And
it's this perfect, evenly down-sloping line.
I mean, okay. I mean, so it's a projection, so you're not going to put in like the big ups and downs, but for a long-term projection. And they have like, we have, if we have like a good, better, best scenario, like if GDP is 0.25 percentage points lower, then
it'll be a bit,
we might be at like 15%. If GDP is higher, we could be at like 3 or 4% debt to GDP, which is just a joke.
On our way to zero.
Yeah. Because again, they're not paying off the debt, right? They're servicing the debt, and guess what? Debt compounds. Yeah. If you're just making your minimum payments, it's still compounding.
And you have to rely on the GDP growing too, right? And how does GDP grow? Because as far as I know, it's not really on a massive growth trajectory, especially when you come into a recession or like recessionary pressures.
Yeah.
And then you, as far as I understand, rely on immigration to make this work, right?
Well, and this is why I have such a problem with using GDP as a measure of anything, because it's it's investment in the country.
So it's including government spending. Is that
that's whatever else it includes. It includes government spending.
Yeah,
which is a ridiculous. We talked about this last time, right?
Because they can throttle that up or down.
Well, and it's not necessarily efficient.
And it's not real.
The
money came from where again?
If the government builds a bridge and people are employed, Like, yeah, that is. I'll switch over here. Yeah, that's economic activity. Okay, yeah, you're right. It is. Oh, I lost my next graph here. But the next one I want to share, here it is the so this one is Government of Canada total gross Treasury bill and bond issuance by fiscal year. So that's a lot of big words, but it just means government debt that they're putting out by fiscal year. So we're sitting around probably 280 billion a year is what they've been issuing since 2007. 7 was lower, 8 went up with the financial crisis.
It actually looks pretty stable for that long, right? Like
yeah,
10, 15 year period.
It was stable. It wasn't good, but it was stable at least. And then 2020, you see this big spike up to 550 billion, right? Over $500 billion. So, and that's an increase of like 300 trillion. 2021, it came down a little bit, 450 billion. 2022, it came down a little bit more to 400 billion. So, okay, we had this, and this is the
narrative.
The narrative, thank you, that we had to do this because of COVID. And,
which we kind of did.
Well,
maybe not 600 billion.
But. That's another episode. Whether or not it was necessary, they did it, fine. And now that's going down, so we don't need it anymore. Great. But then we see a spike, 2023, 24, up to almost 500 billion again from 400. And like maybe we're, a few billion off here. But the point is, why is this going up? And if this is going up, why do you think our total debt to GDP is going to magically peter away to almost nothing?
Yeah.
Like it's just...
And this is a graph in the same report as the other graph.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be fair, there was that little spike or little upward trend.
We're not experts, Mark.
Yeah, no, we're
not even qualified.
No. I mean...
Or elected.
Certainly the part-time Minister of Finance is like we don't even have a full-time Minister of Finance. Come on.
Oh, man.
Anyways...
Yeah, but the budget will balance itself.
Yeah, exactly. Housing is not a... That's what you said. Like, whose responsibility is housing? Well, it depends on what month, right?
Yeah.
Housing is not a federal responsibility.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Housing is a federal responsibility.
When it's politically popular, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So just on that GDP thing where I mentioned Canada needs more immigrants. Well, here, just pull up this.
According to you.
According to
Brent.
National Post. According to RBC. So there's this report from RBC that says Canada needs a lot more immigrants, almost double the current rate in the long run. So I guess they're in this article, they're kind of supportive of the fact that we need to slow down a bit. Like we need to get a grip on what's going on. And it's been crazy growth in the last little bit. But in order to sustain our GDP where it needs to be and keep our economy healthy, like we need... And to like basically offset the demographic trends, right? Of people getting older, leaving the workforce. Boomers. People leaving the workforce and retiring. We need to replenish that with workers, ideally skilled workers, but we
sorry,
almost double the current rate in the long run. So if you think we've had a lot of immigrants in the last little bit, now we need twice as many.
Oh man, sorry, the skilled worker.
So just to read a line from this, so even the current annual immigrant intake of 1.3% of the population is not sufficient to stabilize the age structure, which would require about 2.1%, it said. So that's the report talking. So 2.1% is what it would require to stabilize like the age demographics and all that changing. And what we're at now is 1.3. That's a lot.
So, yeah, I don't like who makes the calculations, who comes up with the numbers, right?
The experts.
Because per capita GDP has decreased in the last year. And like, that's not a surprise, right? So again, gross domestic product, it's all the economic activity in the country. So of course, if you bring in a buttload more people, your GDP is going to go up.
Yeah,
just
GDP
in nominal
goes up.
terms,
Yeah.
Because there's more people spending more money.
Stuff.
But we have to look at it per capita. Like that's not a great measure, right?
What if you doubled your population? Of course, GDP went up.
Yeah,
but
But that's not a true measure of anything useful.
Yeah,
because we don't have the infrastructure, so everything that we use is worse.
Yeah.
The quality of life for Canadians has gotten worse in the past
10 years,
like year,
5 years.
couple of years, whatever, right? Just any way you look at it,
But
it's gotten
not
worse.
really on a trajectory to get better.
No, it's not. And we're talking.
Oh, man.
So the government, of course, is going to trumpet like, yeah, look at GDP and look at debt to GDP. Like, hey, everything's great, because people don't. I don't know. Most people, like, and fair enough, most people don't delve into these things. Like, what do you care, really?
Yeah.
Right? You just you're paying attention to what's going on around you. But there's the
close
rub.
those Airbnbs. I don't like them.
Well, just populist stuff like that, right? But people are starting to figure out, and this is reflective in poll numbers, that okay, maybe I don't know what GDP is, but something ain't right.
Yeah.
Like, I can't.
Bananas are $5.
Yeah, the price of bananas is bananas.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could pay in bananas. Everybody would grow bananas in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But like, my grocery bill has doubled in the last couple of years. Like, what gives? Something's not right. Like,
Something's
the government
not right.
is
You're
telling
probably
me,
buying actually
you believe this fall economic
food.
update, like, everything is, like, really going well. And the government is building all
and you were
these
mentioning
houses.
this too. Like, they pick the window at which they report things. It's like, 9 months.
the wages have outperformed inflation in the last 9 months. Like, what? I don't know.
What
who
about
picks
8
these?
months?
Yeah, what about 7 months? You know, you're picking the numbers that are favorable to you.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is not good for. Well, because we've talked about inflation and inflation being sticky, and once you add wage inflation, you get a spiral often, right? So, yeah, it's like, if your wages have gone up, that's good for you.
Yeah.
But the problem is, wage inflation is what a lot of economists, that's a hard word to say, are scared of and are worried about, because that's not a good sign.
That goes right back into prices increasing.
Yeah, because if you're paying the guy to bring your groceries more money, the cost of your groceries is going to go up, because somebody's got to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like this unending cycle.
Yeah.
At some point, it has to stop, and usually it stops when wages don't go up, and that sucks
they
for
say it doesn't
everybody,
have
but that
to stop.
stops
It
inflation.
has to stop. It has to go back down to 2%. That's the target, which now they're changing to 3%, right?
Well, whatever works. They have to adjust to higher, longer rates or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, the point is, they're using statistics to justify whatever they can, and try to paint a rosy picture when everybody knows the picture is not so rosy. Okay.
Yeah. So I got another thing from CBC. Canada's debt charges. Man, we love the CBC. Canada's debt charges are ballooning as he's going to punch me.
No, I just thought of something else.
Okay. Canada's debt charges are ballooning as Freeland tables a gloomy fall economic statement. So this is
gloomy. I thought it was roses.
Well, this is CBC reporting on it, right? So it might be rosy, but so it just scrolled down a bit. So now with interest rates at a 20-year high, which they've just skyrocketed. The cost to borrow all that money has spiked from $20.3 billion in 2020-2021 to $46.5 billion in this fiscal year. So wait, let me see. That's 2 years?
It's doubled.
It's doubled. It's more than doubled in 2 years. So the debt services charges will march even higher in the years ahead. Carrying the debt is expected to cost the federal treasury $60.7 billion in 28-29, according to the economic statement. So this is according to the statement they released. That's a big factor.
So
I don't even know where to start.
I mean, so the revenue, I'm just looking at 2023 numbers.
Well, the next line in this article is, that means debt service charges are now among the most costly line item in the federal budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Our total revenue is $456 billion. So 60 billion, you said?
46 billion in this fiscal year and 60 billion by 28-29.
Yeah, so 46 billion, that's 10% of revenue. 10% of what we bring in,
10% of our
we're just
revenue.
paying on interest charges, and that's going to go up to 15% probably.
Yeah.
Right? The deficit, $40 billion. So we're just adding another $40 billion to the debt every year. And it's ridiculous numbers, going from 10% of revenue to 15% of revenue.
Yeah.
Like, you're telling me this, and you're telling me that our debt to GDP is going to decrease to like 10% in 30 years.
Ottawa is going to spend $28.9 billion on the armed forces this fiscal year. That's $18 billion less than what the government will send in payments to the banks and bondholders carrying Canada's debt.
And yeah, everything you look at, right? They have like entitlement spending. So like, what do they call it? Elderly person spending or whatever. Like, that's going up incredibly over the next few years.
Yeah.
Like, you can pull. There's too much to go through in the economic statement, but like all their costs
And this is when-
payments,
yeah.
fixed costs are going up. Up.
And when you say like interest rates are going to remain high, and like this is a big impact to our country, right?
Well, and that's the thing, right? The debt that we hold, like, some of it is longer term. So we haven't seen the full increase in debt payments yet. We've just seen with some of the debt rolling over, some of the shorter term debt, and the thing that I had the chart that I had pulled up earlier showed T-bills versus bonds. Or T-bills and bonds. So, and we often will just talk about bonds here on the podcast. T-bills are just a bond with a duration shorter than 1 year.
Right.
So up to 1 year, it's a T-bill. Past that, it's they'll have some other names for it, but it's bonds, right? Bonds are just longer term. But yeah, anything that's been like a year that's rolled over, and we've seen the increased payments. What about the 3 year, the 5 year, the 10 year?
And
right?
those are coming in at really low right now, and they're going to be rolled over to...
Yeah, and I mean, they all have different durations and sell points. So you're going to see a mixture of all of those continue to roll over. But the point is, we're not done. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
And so those like, how far can those payments go, right? In the States, it's, I think, $1 trillion or something is now their cost to service the debt a year.
Ooh.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, that you mentioned the CBC, and I kind of threw my hands up there, but they also announced in this one of the things that they actually did do that's new is increase subsidies for news media.
Okay.
Media companies, right?
Subsidies for current companies that they're subsidizing?
Yeah, like, well, any media outlet, right? They are eligible to get aid, or I think deductions. So it went something like from 55,000 per journalist to 80,000 or something. So they can write that off, right?
Right.
So, like, I don't know. In what
Where
world
does
does this
come
make
from?
sense?
Yeah.
Well, where does it come from? It comes out of the air. It's like condensation. It causes snow. But it's no, they're increasing subsidies available for mainstream news media, not independent necessarily, but the ones that they already support.
So they can outcompete.
Why is the government paying our media?
Well, because
in the beginning,
yeah. But if you think about it, if they control the money, right, and they can choose to subsidize whoever they want, would they subsidize somebody who disagrees with them?
No, but that's why I was so surprised to see the CBC
saying
write this article.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe you let them write a little bit of bad stuff once in a while. It's kind of like Pravda in the USSR during the Cold War. Like,
wait, we're comparing our country.
Yeah, I am, because it was a government-run publication.
Yeah.
Right?
Media
and they
outlet.
would sometimes post things that were a little bit critical, just to give the illusion that there was some choice and that there was some, right? But only so far.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, how can you not see the same thing happening now?
Let's go into this conversation about CBDCs from, was it Nancy Warren?
Oh, I don't even know if we should get into that.
Yeah, that's not related to the economic statement.
No, the fall economic budget. But I mean, that's I don't know. That's they're exploring CBDCs as well here, right?
Yeah.
And
I think some more intently than others, right? Like some are very pro CBDCs. Others are, I'll get on the bandwagon. But you have to think, right? If a CBDC gets in and it's a thing, like if your government loses power, the next government comes in, you might be a victim to them controlling your... Anyways.
No, CBDCs are bad news for people.
Yeah.
Good news for governments, bad
beings.
news for humans. Because of the amount of control that the government can have, and that they've telegraphed, that they've said that they will be able to shape people's spending habits, and maybe we don't like them to spend it on this, so we can give them an expiring CBDC. So you give
we want
credits.
them to spend it on the Canadian debt.
yeah. Where does it come
All right, is
from?
there anything else in this economic update to hit on?
I don't know. I think that was probably enough.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, here's one more I can share. Outlook for public debt charges. Again, just part of the fairy tale.
Okay.
Right? Oh, I'm losing it here. Reflecting higher interest rates, public debt charge estimates have increased over the current year. Forecast to reach $46.5 billion for 2023. 24, and then they have this chart here, right, where we show public debt as a percentage of GDP. So it was over 6% 1991 has decreased, and then we're up to
This is debt as a percentage of GDP again.
Yes, public debt charges. So what it costs to service the debt,
the payments,
not the actual amount of debt, just the payments of debt as a percentage.
So you would expect this graph, like, just if you think about it, you'd expect this graph as interest rates come down, you'd expect the payments to come down.
Yeah.
Right. So as a percentage of GDP, it's probably going to be a down.
Yeah.
Slope, right? But then if interest rates go up, it would go up. Yeah, you would think your payments go. Okay.
And as interest rates have gone up and debt is rolling over, you would expect to see that increase. So,
yeah.
I mean, we saw, so like the low interest rates benefit government. Negative interest rates benefit them a lot as well, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to borrowing, but then, when it goes up, inflation good, interest rates bad, but they kind of go hand in hand. Anyways, we see that there's been a market increase since COVID, right? 2021, it was actually the lowest it's ever been as a percentage of GDP, which again is nonsense, but they would expect us to believe that it's going to come up to this level, which is 1.8% maybe or something of GDP, and just stay flat over the next 5 years. It's just going to be flat.
Yeah.
We're not going to have any increase in public.
How's that for a fairy tale?
Yeah. Which everything that we just talked about, absolute.
It's real.
Absolute
it's
nonsense.
Real. These projections are real.
Yeah, it's all real. So
maybe we want to end off on this M2 chart because M2,
there we go.
For people who don't know.
So I think it's important to talk about M2 money supply more so than inflation or debt to GDP or any of these other nonsense metrics, right? Even our inflation numbers that were just put out, there's a lot of doubt again about how the actual numbers are constructed and whether or not the government is just changing them to fit their narrative. And I think they probably are. Yeah. Because they're feeling pain, so they're like, okay, let's show that interest or that inflation.
Well, if
has
it's
decreased.
Calculated off a basket of goods, and you can tweak the
basket of
goods or some of the metrics around it, you can change the end result in your favor or whatever.
To whatever it is that you want. So, and as people know, like, okay, maybe inflation is under control, or it's not actually that, it's only been 3, 4, 5%, right? Like, no, it hasn't, because again, everybody just needs to look at their grocery bill, all of their bills, which have all skyrocketed. You can't tell me inflation was at 6, 7, 8%.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not and looking at debt to GDP and all this stuff is not the thing that as Canadians, as real estate investors, that we got to look at to determine how things are. Right. M2, I think, is the much better option.
Yeah. So this graph here, if you're not familiar with it,
what's M2, Brent?
Just Google Canada money M2. This is money supply in Canada. I don't want to get into more detail of what specifically, but basically money in circulation.
Money that can be used.
Broad money supply. Yeah, they can be used. Like there's M1, M2, M3, different kind of measures. But M2 is a great way to look at how much money is out there. When you say, like, you hear, they printed money, or there's money created and there's too much money and not enough, or relative to goods and services, like we're just printing like crazy, right? So, but if you look at this line, it's just this hockey stick. It's a good curve, actually. but the problem is that curve is going against you, right? Like if you're a saver, if you're relying on your income, which I think a lot of people are, right? They rely on their wages to pay for their expenses, and you're saving money. This curve just is the rate at which your savings are losing value. So in the last little bit, last 2 years, we've seen this massive spike, right, during COVID.
Yep.
And now in the last year, they've actually started to tighten that, and the money supply actually came down. So if we zoom into that, and February to May, June this year, it actually came back down. So they shrunk the amount of money in the system. I don't even know what the number is. It's like this is zoomed way in, so it is coming down. But in the last 3 months, 4 months, it's gone back up again, higher than it was before.
Interesting.
So you might think like, okay, things are kind of back on track. They're changing their tune. They're going to shrink the money supply. We might be going back down the other direction. But yeah, no. When you look at this, the last 3 months, it's going right back up. So what does that mean?
To me, M2 is a much better measure of inflation than anything else, than this basket of goods or whatever, because this determines like I don't know, what it costs you to live and the state of your savings versus.
It's basically what your money can buy, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the purchasing power of your money?
Yeah, to me, that's inflation right there.
Yeah.
And so if you see this hockey stick, like that's not good.
Yeah. When dollars are plentiful, then everything else. How does this work? When dollars are plentiful, everything else gets more expensive.
Yeah.
When dollars are scarce, then everything stays kind of the same.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, that's a problem. I mean, like, so talking about real estate.
Yeah.
Right? And
that's scarce.
Yeah, it's
or
scarce.
Relatively scarce.
And I mean, people are concerned.
But we got
now.
1,400 new skilled workers?
Oh,
what did you say?
That's one of the things I wanted to mention from the right. They're placing a focus on bringing in skilled workers, which is like yes, if you're gonna bring in lots of immigrants, make sure they can all build houses.
Yeah,
because that's what we need, right?
And they're gonna need the houses too. So.
And they also need them. Build your own house once you get here. So this focus has increased.
Every new immigrant gets a house building kit,
and like I don't know what determines a skilled, construction worker, but since May, 1,400. 1,400. Yes. Hey, great. Like
out of how many immigrants?
Yeah, like what, 1 million or whatever. Or well, since May, so 500,000. Sorry,
500,000.
1,400 of them are skilled. Like this is the best we can do.
What are the other 490,000?
And where these guys are like on one site in Vaughan somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, like. Oh man, it just. Anyways, getting back to real estate, a lot of people are worried because they're not like they're negative cash flow, right? It's tough.
Yeah,
for investors, and maybe not in the short term world, but certainly in the long term world, if you had your payments double, like that's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, what do you think, Brent? Is it time to get out of long term rentals?
Oh well, not with these trends, and that's where you get back to the M2 curve, right? The money supply. If money supply is growing at an ever increasing rate, and that's something that you and I, as just normal people, can't control.
I wouldn't say that we're normal people, Brent, but
okay,
carry on.
As not in control of the money supply people that we are, we can't basically turn the faucet off and say, okay, no more dollars, guys. We're just going to use what we got.
Sorry, that was another.
Oh boy.
You keep talking. I'm going to look for this.
Well, if we can't control the money supply, then we need to look for things that are scarce. Ultimately, right? Like we need to take the dollars that they're slowly printing or quickly printing, more and more quickly printing, and buy assets that are scarce. And what assets can you buy? That are a sizable amount of money that will reasonably hold their value, and I guess you could buy anything.
Common sense?
Yeah, you could buy anything that's better than dollars, but a lot of people gravitate to real estate for all the other advantages that we've been talking about forever.
Which is terrible, Brent.
Yeah, because investors are driving up the house price.
Okay, so here's what I was looking for, and I'll let you get back to your rant while I break in with one of my own. Homes should be for Canadians to live in, not a speculative financial asset class for investors. So this is right from the economic update. The federal government is taking action to curb investor activity that drives up the cost of housing while also helping Canadians buy and stay in their homes. So they're just outright saying that the reason, or at least one of the reasons that housing is going up is because of investors. And this has been a popular trope in or a meme going around for a while, that it's all these greedy investors buying homes that's driving up the price.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
No, Brent, it's not. These greedy investors are doing what they have been doing since the creation of Canada, buying homes and renting them out, because this is the only spot, the only creation of rental housing is certainly not from the federal government, certainly not from any other level of government. They don't create housing. They take credit for
1,400 skilled workers.
Well, and you look at they take credit for, like, we're creating all this new housing, right? And you read the fine print. It's like stuff that's already been completed, stuff that is shovel in the ground, and stuff that will probably happen in the next 5 years. And
on all the backs of investors' risk.
It's investors are doing. The government doesn't have a department of building houses or whatever, and they're not putting those 1,400 guys to work, building houses.
Overtime.
They're just making financing options available and spending money here and there, and they include, like, fixing houses as part of this total number of houses that they're building or whatever, right?
Which is fair enough, because if you have a vacant building with 100 and something units in it that you have been, like, government housing unit that's been sitting vacant, like, fix that up. That's new housing supply, I guess. Technically, it's been sitting vacant for 10 years.
It was already there, and just not. Anyways, point is, they're making a villain of. They're making villains of investors, and they should not be doing that if they were smart, because investors provide housing.
Yeah.
When you buy one house and you turn it into three, some people might not like that because it's less quality of life for people. But the government should certainly like that, because that is more housing.
That's 3 times more housing.
It's densification in an existing spot. They didn't have to do anything. They had to do some work.
They didn't have to build a new school. They didn't have to build a new fire station, or maybe they had to increase the size of the water line or something like that. But I mean,
but this is a relatively quick and easy way to increase the number of houses in Canada.
Otherwise, money is going to go to other countries. Right? Or other areas, other countries.
Yeah. Well, like I've seen it, short-term rental investors, even long-term rental. They're like, can we switch to short-term? Can we switch to can we do anything other than long-term? Or should I just sell it?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Sometimes the answer is you should just shell it.
Yeah.
Sell it. Don't shell it.
Yeah. Well, not everybody's a homeowner either, too, right? So.
No.
I'd be even thinking of getting into renting myself. It's so much work being a homeowner. we had a leak in our house, and the hose on the laundry machine, it was just dripping for like months. So we didn't know this because we're upstairs. We had tenants in the basement. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, there's water coming out over here, and like we looked, and there's all like water, drywall damage, and like the flooring, and it's like, oh man. But yeah, it turns out it was just a leaky hose. But like that's an issue, and now I got to deal with this and pay for it, and like I'd rather be a tenant and just call the landlord and be like, hey, buddy, you got a leak. I'll be at my parents' place for a week while you fix this. But it's not easy. I'm just saying, like if you have a good house and it's in a good state of repair and you maintain it well, but not everybody.
You have to maintain it.
Yeah, not everybody does maintain things and whatever, right? They have the knack for that.
But anyways, you were talking about, I don't know, you were talking about something, real estate, before I jumped in.
No,
about
investing. I was done with that.
Oh, yeah, is it a good investment still?
So this is where, like, we keep talking about zooming out, right? Because if you zoom in right now and you say, I'm going to buy something that's negative cash flow.
Yeah. That's a tough sell.
Yeah, it's a tough sell. But at the same time, you think in 15 years you're going to be able to afford that house? Like, zoom out on these timelines and look at these projections.
So what you're saying is, like, wait until it's cash flow positive? Or this is the mindset?
Yeah, this is the mindset. I think why things are frozen up and people are a little bit scared, because it is more risky, right? If you can't cover your costs in the present day, like if you buy it and your cash flow negative, then it's going to be tough. Like, you have to commit to this investment and have the capital sitting around to do that. But this is where people who have cash sitting on the sidelines
be on the edge of profitability, and if you don't cash flow 1 month,
then you
like
lose
your whole world is ended.
Yeah, so don't be in that situation. But this is where people with cash sitting around are really taking advantage, right? Because they're coming in and saying, look, these house prices are depressed. I know that in 15 years, this is going to be a completely different story. Because like we said, right, the immigration numbers need to double according to their estimates, right? Just to replace the people. So like, we're going to have twice as many. You know, we had 1 million people last year. Maybe it comes back down to 750, 500, whatever. Even if it's 500, we go up to 1 million, or 750 and we go up to 1.5 million, right? Like that is a lot of people. And they're all usually, they come to certain areas for certain reasons, economic reasons, jobs, families, schools, whatever, right?
And we already have a housing shortage.
Yeah. And we're not getting out of that with the 1,400 workers working overtime, right? So
could they come in Saturday maybe? Like,
yeah. You know? And like you still, like you said, you want to convert to 3 units. Like it is easier now for sure than it was 5-8 years ago, but it's still a bit of a challenge and it takes a lot of money.
Not a lot of people are doing it either.
No.
Like, you do it all the time. So this is but not a lot of people are doing this.
No. So that's where I think land is still valued, undervalued. A lot of the land locally that is going to be intensified over the next 15 years, it's undervalued, right?
Yeah.
So you're buying a single family home lot that's just, priced as a single family home, and you're taking it and you're increasing its income potential, right?
Yeah.
Which increases its value. And you as an investor, seeing that opportunity, you're buying something undervalued and you're holding on to it for a while, and you're going to do really well. So unless the government comes in and taxes you and does some crazy things, this is investors are evil. We're going to tax them at 100% or 99%.
I think that's probably the biggest risk for investors right now. Like for short-term rentals, absolutely. Government regulation is the biggest risk factor when you're looking at buying a place.
It's not the underlying dynamics of the market, like supply and demand, and the fact
that's important too. But the biggest factor is regulatory risk.
Yeah.
And I think that's also probably going to be the case for long-term rentals soon.
Yeah, but we have seen more favor-built stuff towards long-term rentals too, right? Like they're giving more funding for long-term rental projects, and so you see an uptick in construction for that, and that's good, I guess. But it's just like you're funding investors too, right?
On one hand, you're saying it's this investor activity that's driving up housing prices, but on the other hand, all of the stuff that they're doing to build new houses
is funding
money to investor activity. Come on, guys.
But that money comes from nowhere. That's M2 growth. And you're just taking money from everybody without them knowing it, or even right in front of their eyes, and giving it them. It's crazy. Anyways.
It is. But there's a couple important things here for the long-term view of housing, right? So one is just supply and demand, which we've talked about, right?
Those fundamentals seem
with
strong.
Interest rates being high right now, there is less supply. Like builders are building less in general, I think. I think housing starts have dropped. So that's the supply side.
A lot of construction is
demand side. Down. Well, immigration is not. Everybody's calling for let's slow down immigration until we figure out what's going on. They're not doing that. And then you've got this thing from RBC. Like that's a government plant, 100%. That is the government signaling intentions. This is usually how they do it, right? You'll find a friendly source and a friendly media source, so someone to do some research that backs up what you're saying, and then you put it out there, and then that's followed by another study in a couple months, and then a few more, and then eventually it becomes the narrative. So now it's not even the government's plan or the government doing it. They're like, we have to do this. Like, look at what all these experts are saying, right? So I mean, if I'm correct, right, that means increased immigration, not decreased.
Yeah.
Which
in
is
the long run, right? So it might be politically not popular right now, which I think it is, right? Like we kind of overblew it when we doubled the amount of immigrants in a year, and all the fact that like a lot of them are students and they can't find a place, and it's just a lot of these stories come out, right? And then the politics of the situation is like, we got to slow this down a little bit. It's like, we're doing the right thing, we're slowing it down, but the underlying problem is still there. We have to increase it, so we're going to find a way to increase it.
Yeah, so there's already a supply problem. There's a demand issue with, so again, like you said, if we do slow down immigration to 750,000 a year, that's still more than we have capacity for.
Yeah, and historically, that's
more than we have houses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we still have that problem.
I think
supply
all this
demand
kind of boils down.
Well, but then...
Oh, another thing.
Well, no, then let's look at M2.
Yeah.
Right? This is the other thing we talk about often.
Houses are denominated in dollars.
Yes, and we talk about this often, right? When, like, so you have to outpace M2, but when the money supply increases, hard asset prices, maybe not the value, but the prices go up.
Yeah.
Right? That's where money sits first. And in Canada especially, that's real estate. Money flows there first. It's just proven.
Just because you have mortgage originations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if M2 is going up, guess what? House prices are going up.
Yeah.
And it may be in Canadian pesos, but like if that's what you're investing in, that's what you got.
Yeah.
So everything to me points to house prices going up.
So I guess the moral of the story
increase.
is turn your dollars into something scarce. Real estate's a great option.
Dollars are not scarce.
No, there's a lot of good reasons why real estate. And then I think for me, like boiling it down to an investment thesis, and this is what, like, I got into this because I believe in it, but not just because I believe, but it's like I actually study some of this stuff and figure out, okay, why do I believe in this? Well, okay, of all these longer term trends, like if I thought it was just going to go away tomorrow, why would I make a business doing this, right? Like, so
maybe you're just dumb, Brent.
Yeah, maybe I'm just dumb, but maybe we are dumb. Maybe I'm dumb.
It's a possibility.
But yeah, it is. It's maybe more than a 0% chance. But it comes down to forming this this investment thesis. Like, well, why are we doing intensification in this area?
Yeah.
Right. And we don't just look at the numbers today. We look at the numbers for the last 30, 50 years. And then we say, what are the numbers for the next 20, 50 years? Right. We say, do we fit in this like long-term trajectory? It might come down, right? We might be in a downturn, but usually if you look back in history, the downturns are the buying opportunities, right? And it doesn't make sense when a market's going down that to make a purchase, right? Because like right now where things are negative cash flow, the interest cost's too high. But if you stick to your investment thesis and your beliefs founded on, some of this data, you can actually make a confident decision, even though it goes against the grain.
Yeah.
Right. It might not seem like the best thing in the moment. And I don't know. I don't want to like suggest to anybody, hey, you should just go buy some random thing or whatever. But you need to make a calculated decision and an informed decision. But in the grand scheme of things, over the next 15, 20 years, I think we're in for some really big increases, given the money to like M2 supply to that curve, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to me, like, I'm about cash flow, right? That's our thing. So if I'm looking at a long-term rental, for example, and, when things are good, it's going to cash flow $200 a month. And then things aren't good, and maybe you're going to be short $200 a month. Yeah. Or whatever. It's like, what is the difference?
Yeah.
To me, it's not like you're cash flowing $5,000 a month and then you're like, so if it's a matter like something like that, like that's just part of the cost of owning this property.
Yeah.
To me, and you budget for that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're going to be negative $500 a month or whatever. If I had an RSP and I was investing in something, I would do a lump sum, and then I would be putting away my monthly contribution is $500 a month. Yeah. So same kind of thing, and
it's costing the
it's
same
going to
as
be
your
a better
RSP,
investment,
but it's a way better investment.
Yeah. So that's how I would look at it.
Let's leave it there.
Let's leave it there.
Oh.
Okay, well, thanks for putting up with us again, folks. That went longer than we thought again, but such is
because we keep repeating ourselves.
Life. Yeah.
But fairy tales are great, so
so hopefully you listened to this and it put you to sleep, and we'll have more fairy tales for you coming up. So until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.